Twitter celebrity. Awesome. Yeah, about that. Edelman Digital came out with a survey of influencers online like 6 months ago, and the top 20 in the world, with over 100 million people on the site. There was 2 Canadians. It was me and Justin Bieber. I'm now forever entrenched with Justin Bieber, so that's all I've got to say today. That alone is pain inside enough. Now, I'm actually not going to talk a heck of a lot about social media. I'm going to talk about being a big deal and actually not really being a big deal, because I'm a big deal on a fairly relevant social media site, and it sounds pretty awesome. You know, it got me a book deal, and I'm on a book tour right now. 6 cities down, 24 to go. I head out tomorrow morning to Victoria. Book's doing great, National Post bestseller, Globe and Mail bestseller. Who would have thought a moron like me could do that? And you know what I realized? Being a big deal isn't a big deal. And I'll tell you why. I was at dinner. It was my night to cook a few months ago, so we went to Denny's. And so it was me and my son. And we walked into Denny's, and I went in and realized, oh, no. I forgot something. I forgot my BlackBerry in the car. If you've ever left your phone in your car, in your purse, or at home, you know how naked you feel. And I looked at my little man, who's 8 at the time, and I said, little man, I forgot my BlackBerry in the car. Let's just go grab it. And he said, Daddy, can we just remember to forget it tonight? And that's when I realized being a big deal isn't a big deal if we're not a big deal to the people we care about. Because we go through life saying we're doing this for our family, we're doing this to provide. We realize they don't care. Owen, my man, doesn't care about Twitter or Tweezer or whatever I want to call it. Who cares? And I realize this because we get so busy. We go, right? We just keep going. We keep going. We don't stop. It's been for ages and for decades and for centuries, right? Perseverance and pushing through. I learned that from my grandfather. Was in the Queen's Own Rifle in World War II battalion, sergeant in Metro Toronto Police Force, my hero. He always said, no matter what, you keep going and you don't stop. And I went, that's right. And my mom, who is my hero and my biggest fan, she always taught me this through everything she's gone through. And raising us on her own was, Scott, doesn't matter. You just keep going. You don't stop. And I said, okay, that's my line. That's what I'm going to do in life, is keep going and do not stop. Not only was I supposed to do that, but it's manly to do that, and we show our son and we show our family that we just keep going and we don't stop. So I did that. 8 years ago, 9 years ago, I worked for a packaging company. I flew around North America, national sales training manager. You should have seen my business card. It's so fancy. Plaque on my wall. I flew around North America training people how to sell bubble wrap. I'm going to say that again. I flew around North America training people how to sell bubble wrap. You think your job is BS? Welcome to my world. And I flew around, and I was a huge deal. I won awards. I was a huge deal. And I realized being a big deal isn't such a big deal. I was driving up Hollywood Boulevard for the first time ever. And I went, you know what? How awesome is this? And I'm looking at a seat that's empty because I'm traveling by myself. And then my son was born 9 years ago. And I realized, Daddy doesn't want to be such a big deal right now. I want to be home. So I pitched it to the president of the company. I said, I'm going to telecommute. 9 years ago, that was a swear word. People didn't know what that meant. I said, I want to work from home. I will continue to travel multiple times a month for you. I will continue to travel on Saturday night stayovers. So for those of you who've traveled, understand it's a less fare on an airline. I'll save you money, but I want my time back. You know what he said? No. You're just going to keep going. I said, no, I'm not. I'm done. And I walked out, and I quit. I had 68 cents in the bank and a 2-week-old son. Told you I was a moron. It wasn't smart. But you know what I said? You know when I got home, we sat there and said, what are we going to do? Do you know what I said? I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to build my company. I'm not going to stop. So I did that. And I started to build it. And I built it. And I started to travel again. But this time for my own company. So that's okay, right? Sure, I left because I didn't want to do that anymore. But this was for us this time. I'm going to be a big deal. So my son can be proud of me. So my mom can be proud of me. This is what I'm going to do. And you go through life and things happen. I end up getting divorced. And I leave home. I leave my home. I leave my son. You know what I said? It's okay. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to be the greatest dad on every other weekend and every Wednesday night. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to stop, so I'll keep going. It was the hardest thing I ever had to do, I thought. Then 2 years later, I got custody of my son. My girlfriend, wonderful mother to him. And I'm in Las Vegas because I'm traveling, because I'm working, because I keep going. And I get a phone call at 3 in the morning that my grandmother has died. So I get to the airport and say, I need to go. I need to go home. And they said, I'm sorry, you can't. The flight's full. You can go tomorrow. I said, no, I can't. I have to go. I'm crying. Grown man in the airport, weeping. And an Air Canada agent on the phone took pity on me and said, you need to keep going. You go. Don't stop. And she got me home. And I go to her funeral. My son, my girlfriend can't come because my son, I think, has strep throat. So Tammy, my girl, takes him to the clinic right across the street from here. I go to the funeral, and my phone's buzzing. It's vibrating. During the funeral, who is calling me at this time in my life? And I get out of the service, and I don't recognize these random numbers phoning. And I pick it up, and it's my girlfriend. Scott, we've been in an accident. Somebody ran a red light and T-boned us right here. She didn't stop. She just kept going right into the car. I ran out of the funeral, drove up Trafalgar right here. Traffic was backed up. You know why? Because there was an accident with my son and my girlfriend in it. So I drove up the opposite side of the road, because I have to get there. I can't stop. And I get up there, and my son's sitting there. My girlfriend's wrapped in an emergency blanket. The car is just annihilated on the side of the road. The firefighter said, slow down there, cowboy. We don't need another accident. I said, I can't slow down. I need to get there right now. The firefighter says, if the car hit your girlfriend's car 6 inches to the right, she's dead. And you're lucky your son was in a booster seat with an optional back because his head would have gone through the window if it did not. I said, thank God, all right. We can keep going. And we take her to the hospital. She goes in the ambulance. Owen jumps into the car. Thank God he's not hurt, emotionally or physically. We go to the hospital. The hospital says to my girlfriend, Tammy, you're fine. No worries. Just keep going. You don't stop. No, because we find out later she's not fine. She has brain injury on both sides of her brain. Her entire left side of her body is half shattered. This is 3 years ago. My girl's been at home for over 1,000 days. 1,000 days. Doesn't leave the house. She tries to keep going. And you know what we say to each other? Every single day, we're just going to keep going. We're not going to stop. One day at a time. You said this to yourself, right? One step at a time. Let's just keep going. So that's what we try to do every day. And when you look at the one you love who's in constant pain, you can't fix it. You just keep going. So that's what we did 3 years ago. And a year ago, I'm at a friend's house. We're helping paint the house. Son's at school. Girl's resting at home. I got some of my time. So what do I do on my own time? I go, right? I keep going. And I get a phone call from the old neighbors where I used to live. Called me up and said, Scott, just so you know, whatever you need and whatever Owen needs, you let me know. And I said, that's weird. Why would you call and say that? She says, you didn't hear? Last night, Owen's mom died. I said, pardon? And she died suddenly. So then that becomes the hardest day of my life because I have to tell my son that his mom is dead. And you know what I said to him that day? It's okay. We're just going to keep going. We're not going to stop. And we will keep going. And we're not going to give up because my grandfather gave me the example. My mom gave me the example. I'm going to show you that we can keep going. So that's what I did. And we kept going. We didn't stop. And then 5, 6 months ago, 7 months ago, I'm driving the car and it's snowing outside and I go through a light and the brakes don't work so well, but I don't notice it. I'm like, I'll get that checked one day. I don't have time right now. I have to keep going. I have to keep going. I gotta. It's an example for my son. I gotta help my girl out. I'm gonna keep going. So I go, and I'm gonna go head down to Texas for a conference. But first, since I taught at this fine establishment of Sheridan College, I gotta drive to the Davis campus in Brampton to give one final exam before we head down to Texas and be a big deal down there. So I go, and I drive on the 407. And we get to the Mavis exit, my exit. And I pull off the exit, and I realize I can't stop. My brakes are gone. The brakes I realized 3 weeks previous should be looked at. I didn't have time to stop. And now I can't stop. And now I will keep going. I don't know if you've ever been in this situation, but the exit was a T. I couldn't go through. I had to decide, which way will I may die now? Which way do I want to choose to make my son an orphan? The northbound 18-wheeler that's coming across, or the car that's coming southbound? I'm going 92 kilometers an hour. I know that because it's one of the last things I looked at. And I said, oh, no, I should have stopped. I should have stopped when I could have, and I didn't. I said, that's it. This is it. I'm done. If you've ever been in this situation, you know what I'm talking about. The whole world just stops, except you don't. And I said, you know what? No. Not on my watch, you won't. So I used all the Xbox video game skills I had from driving games. And I pulled wide. And I came looping around into the southbound lane. And I got in front of the car that was coming down so close to him that when I got into the lane and hit up against the curb, he already passed me. I'm sure losing his mind. And I bounced off the curb, and then my brakes came back. And I stopped, and I opened the door, and I threw up on the street. And then I drove, and I kept going. And I did the exam. And then I drove this car to Canadian Tire to get the brakes done. I hopped on a plane. I couldn't stop. I'm a big deal. I had to go. And I went to Texas, and I got to be a big deal for a week. And I came home, picked up the car. Oh, good, they're done. It's okay. And then my chest hurt. I said, this isn't right. But I can't get it checked. But then I went to, because I had friends and family who made me go. And I went to the emergency room, and I sat there. And at 3:30 in the morning, the doctor came in and said, you know what, Scott? You need to stop. I said, I can't. I have to keep going. He says, you will stop, or your body will stop. And I realized that. We need to stop. We need to stop going. It's nice to be a big deal online. It's nice to be connected with our BlackBerries that we can't use here, and our iPhones that I can connect to the world. And sometimes we have to disconnect because we never appreciate where we're at. We're always trying to go somewhere else. We spend the first 18 years of our lives trying to look older and the last 60 trying to look younger. That isn't right. We get a promotion and we look at where do we go next. We get a car, we see a new one, we're like, we want that one. We get a house, I need a bigger one. We never just stop and realize what we've got. We never stop and realize the people, the little ones, my little hero that I'm trying to provide for. You know what he actually wants? He just wants me and my time. So I decided to do something about it. And this summer was the summer of Owen. We did nothing. It was awesome. No camps, no soccer, no baseball. Every day we woke up and said, what do you want to do today? And he said, you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm with you. I'm sure that'll change when he becomes a teenager. But he said that, and that's when I realized. We have to stop to realize where we've gone. We have to stop to realize why we're going somewhere, and we need to stop so we can keep going. And I think that's an idea worth spreading. Thank you.